Pope Francis is dead. China is countering our tariffs, and Canada is about to have a major leadership shakeup. All that and more on this episode of Spin Cycle Live. I'm your host, Nathan Hale, and boy, do we have a lot to talk about today. Some major changes. I feel like we really have two major things to talk about, and the rest of it is just kind of up for a more general discussion. You know, I was looking through the news cycle today, and there wasn't that much that really stood out to me other than what we'll be covering today. So I hope you're all doing good out there, wherever you are in the world. And let's get right into our first story today. So this comes from the Daily Wire. So Pope Francis has died today at the age of 88 years old. And we are beginning the transition for a new pope. Now, I'm not Catholic, but if you are Catholic out there, my thoughts are with you. I'm sure this is a seldom day for you, and I hope that you mourn through the loss of Pope Francis as you can, and we'll see who the next pope of the Catholic Church is. But regardless of what religion you are, if you're not religious at all, this is a big deal worldwide. I mean, the Pope of the Catholic Church is a figurehead within Catholicism and has been a staple of Western religion for centuries. So anytime we get a new pope, it's kind of a big deal. So let's read through the story. So Pope Francis, a charismatic and controversial leader whose decade-long tenure marked a turning point for the Catholic Church, died Monday morning, the day after Easter. He was 88 years old. Pope, forgive me for pronouncing the name wrong, but Pope Francis was elected in March 2013 after Pope Benedict was at the 10th, 5th, the 16th. Pope Benedict the 16th resigned, the first pontiff to step down since Gregory the 11th or Gregory the 12th in 1415. The first Latin American pope, Francis's papacy often adopted a progressive tone, and the Pope recently marking headlines for criticizing Vice President JD Vance, a Catholic, and the Trump administration's, quote, program of mass deportation. Francis made many significant changes during his papacy, naming women to traditionally male positions and appointing cardinals from countries that had not previously had cardinals. He was criticized by some for not excommunicating clerics who had committed sexual abuse. In 2013, 6 months after his election as Pope, he said that the church had grown, quote, obsessed with abortion, gay marriage, and contraception, stating, quote, it is not necessary to talk about these issues at the time. The dogmatic and moral teachings of the church are not all equivalent. The church's pastoral ministry cannot be obsessed with the transmission of a disjointed multitude of doctrines to be imposed consistently. In 2017, Francis amended the Code of Canon Law, giving bishops more authority to translate the Latin liturgical language. As Pope, Francis championed immigrants. In 2016, he criticized Donald Trump, saying he was, quote, not Christian because he wanted to build walls instead of bridges. For a religious leader, the question of a person's faith is disgraceful. I'm proud to be a Christian, Trump replied. So if you want to read the full story, link is in the description, obviously. But it'll be interesting to see who they pick. My understanding is that it's about a 50-50 mix right now within the church of more progressive cardinals versus more conservative cardinals. It'll be interesting to see who they pick and kind of what the messaging is. My understanding is that a lot of Catholics, at least from what I heard, have had issues with the Catholic Church speaking about or not having an opinion or talking down on a lot of things that they have over the past few years. So we'll see who they decide to stall now. And as always, I resort to Michael Knowles to tell me about anything Catholic related. So keep an eye out for that. We'll be sure to cover it when it does happen, but we probably won't have news on who the new pope is until probably, I would say mid next week at the earliest. So that's all I got to say about that. But with that, obviously came some news because yesterday, JD Vance met the Pope. So JD Vance is Catholic, and JD Vance met Pope Francis yesterday, I guess the day before he did. And now people are acting like absolute ghouls, trying to accuse JD Vance of killing the Pope because he saw him yesterday and the Pope is dead today. It's just the whole thing. So I just want to read through the story because it's so stupid the way that people behave, especially with things like this. Same thing happened with Liz Truss around the time the Queen died. Now, I'm no friend of Liz Truss, but, trying to accuse her of being the death of the Queen, I think is ridiculous. I mean, the fact of the matter is he was 88. The Queen was, what, like 150 when she died, right? So sometimes people just die. It just happens, right? It's not anything to be, condoning some or not, complaining, not necessarily complaining, but what's the right word I'm looking for? I don't know, dogging someone over maybe for meeting them, right? It would be like saying that, you met Jimmy Carter and the next day Jimmy Carter dies, right? Jimmy Carter was on hospice for 2 years. He was old. Old people die. It happens. It's a fact of life, right? So, Pope Francis died on Monday, and a number of absolute ghouls on X have spent the morning attempting to blame Vice President JD Vance for the pontiff's passing. Vance, who was an atheist prior to his conversion to Catholicism, spent the holiday weekend with his family at the Vatican and shared photos on Easter Sunday of his brief meeting with Pope Francis. Just hours later, however, the vice president shared his condolences after learning that the Pope had passed. Quote, "I just learned of the passing of Pope Francis. My heart goes out to the millions of Christians all over the world who loved him. I was happy to see him yesterday, though he was obviously very ill. But I'll always remember him for the below homily he gave in the very early days of COVID. It was really quite beautiful. May God rest his soul," he said on X. It was not long before Vance's critics took to X to suggest that he'd had something to do with the Pope's passing, despite the Catholic leader's very public and very lengthy battle with respiratory illness. The New York Times even reported that Pope Francis has been given a stern warning upon finally leaving the hospital, as doctors told him that he'd effectively been granted miraculous healing and should remain isolated to aid in his recovery. So some of these tweets go out. Jay Asken, who, by the way, is apparently a member of the Islamic religion here, judging by his Twitter handle. The vice president killed the Pope. He just flat out said after JD Vance met with Pope Francis. Sean on X also said the Pope meets with Vance, immediately dies of cringe. Other posts said, not him passing away 4 hours after this. JD Vance is the Antichrist confirmed. Quote, if we were on 1600s, they would have accused him of witchcraft and burned him in public. I think we should bring that back. Quote, imagine being so bad at Catholicism that you killed the Pope. Quote, every crime show I've ever watched tells me that the last person to see someone alive is usually a prime suspect. Quote, and now he's dead. WTF. Quote, I would die too if I had to meet JD Vance. So the same exact thing happened with Liz Truss, where Liz Truss met with the Queen, and the next day or a day or two after meeting with her for the first time, the Queen sadly passed away. Same thing with Pope Francis, sadly passed away, and the internet roared at Liz Truss for killing the Queen. Now, obviously, we know that JD Vance and Liz Truss did not literally kill these two figureheads, but to suggest that they did, I think, is a travesty to not only the honors of these two amazing figureheads. I mean, like the Queen, like the Pope or not, they did lead a major worldwide institution for decades. The queen for many, many decades, in her case. But also to the reputation of people like JD Vance and Liz Truss. Like I said, I'm no friend of Liz Truss. She didn't really do all that much as prime minister. I think she could have done way more with her time in there. But I mean, to hold that over her head, I mean, I think that's extremely misguided. Same thing with JD Vance. I mean, JD Vance is a Catholic, and to suggest online that he had anything to do with the sad passing of the Pope, I think is insanely ridiculous. I mean, Liz Truss is a Brit, and I'm sure that in some way or another she had a lot of respect for the Queen. I mean, I have a lot of respect for our American presidents. I would be devastated if someone ever suggested that I had anything to do with their death whatsoever, right? So I think it's just so misguided, and people on the internet I think are just ridiculous. They take jokes way too far. And maybe one viral tweet would have been fine, but like I just read you off 5 or 6 different tweets from people that have all gotten so much attention. The joke's dead, y'all. The joke's dead. Time to move on, right? Leave these poor guys alone. That's all I gotta say about that. All right, so let's talk about China and tariffs. We'll get away from this. This topic's been rather bleak, so let's move on to, I guess, something maybe a little bit more. Maybe a little less bleak. So this comes from Reuters. China warns countries against striking trade deal with U.S. at its expense. So if you didn't already know, the United States has created a massive tariff on Chinese goods coming to the United States. It's 145%, I believe, is my understanding of it. China has stricken back with their own tariff, which I believe is 125%. And now China is basically saying, hey, all of you countries out there who are trying to make these really good trade deals in the United States, don't do it because we'll penalize you for it. So after all these tariffs went into place with it over the past few weeks, lots of different countries like Italy, came to the United States, basically begged for forgiveness, and are working on creating these much better trade agreements with the United States to get better trade deals. China is not one of them, though, and I think the thing. Well, I won't get ahead of myself. Let's talk about the story first, and then we'll get into it. So this comes from Reuters, like I said. China on Monday accused Washington of abusing tariffs and warned countries against striking a broader economic deal with the United States at its expense, ratcheting up its rhetoric in the spiraling trade war between the world's two biggest economies. Beijing will firmly oppose any party striking a deal at China's expense and will, quote, take countermeasures in a resolute and reciprocal manner, unquote, its commerce minister said. The ministry was responding to a Bloomberg report citing sources familiar with the matter, and the Trump administration is preparing to pressure nations seeking tariff reductions or exemptions from the U.S. to curb trade with China, including promising monetary sanctions. President Donald Trump paused the sweeping tariffs he announced on dozens of countries on April 2nd, except those on China, signaling out the world's second largest economy for the biggest levies. In a series of moves, Washington has raised tariffs on China imports to 145%, promoting Beijing to slap retaliatory duties of 125% on U.S. goods, effectively eradicating trade embargoes against each other. Last week, China signaled that its own across-the-board rates would not rise further. Pushing a hardline stance, Beijing will this week convene an informal United Nations Security Council meeting to accuse Washington of bullying and, quote, casting a shadow over the global efforts of peace and development by weaponizing tariffs. Earlier this month, U.S. Trade Representative Jameson Geer said that nearly 50 countries have approached him to discuss the steep additional tariffs imposed by Trump. I think the thing here that's so fascinating to me is the fact that this would all go away if China simply just had open trade with the United States. right? Why do we have tariffs on China in the first place? Why is China having tariffs on our products? If China just played fair by the rules, this wouldn't have happened in the first place. We wouldn't be in this situation. So I'm very, like I said, I'm very mixed on the whole tariff situation right now. I hope it works out for us in the long run. But I think we've hit a lot of countries very unfairly with our tariffs, such as Canada, which we'll talk about Canada in just a minute because I have a lot to say about Canada. But I mean, China does not play by the rules in any sense of the word at all. So anything we can do to really bash their economy, I have no issues with it at all. My issue lies more with my fear is that by bashing the Chinese economy, it's mutually assured destruction that our economy will get bashed as well because of it. But we'll see how this all plays out for us in the United States. I'm hoping that smarter minds emerge and that these trade deals end up working out great for the U.S. and we end up having a really, really strong economy going forward the next 3 years of the Trump administration. I'm holding out my opinions really until January, and when we can finally start to see if these tariffs are working or not. I give them a few months to see kind of how things are rolling out with that. So I think it's upsetting that China has taken the perspective of we're the biggest buyer of Chinese products worldwide, from what I understand, or at least we're one of the largest, and we want China to play by the rules. We want China to be fair, but they won't do it. So we're going to see who our true allies are in the world, and I think it's going to be very important to see who stands by China, who stands by the United States going forward with a lot of these trade deals. And I'll be interested to see which countries kind of fall on that list of supporting the United States truly. So we'll see how that all goes. But that's all I got to say about that. All right. So let's talk about Canada. I don't think that Canada has gotten enough coverage here in the United States. And I've been trying to kind of booster that a little bit, at least on this show, and talk about it a little bit more. So China is having elections on April 28th. Right now, the Liberal Party in China, previously headed up by Justin Trudeau, is running to continue control of the country. Mark Carney is the current leader and the current Prime Minister of Canada for the Liberal Party. He's running up against the opposition party, which are the Conservatives, headed up by Pierre Poilievre. Now, pre-Donald Trump, we're going to talk about the polls in a minute, but pre-Donald Trump, Canada was on the right course to electing a conservative party into power. But as Donald Trump has come in and the rhetoric that has come from Trump, we're seeing that decline greatly. Now, this is not to be necessarily a bash on Donald Trump. I'm a fan of Donald Trump. I have that MAGA hat right here on my desk in front of me. I'm a big fan of Trump. I voted for him. But I think that the obsession that Canada has with the United States and our politics is a bit detrimental to them, especially when we have a president suggesting that we should be making Canada the 51st state, and we're imposing tariffs on our strongest trading ally, being in Canada. So I want to talk about this. So early voting has opened up in Canada, and we're seeing this rhetoric that Trump is this big bad, and the way that Canadians are obsessed with our leader here in the United States heading into the ballot box. So I want to show you this video. So this video comes from an early voting area. I'm going to keep the audio off just so I can continue talking. But this here, I'll let me get the audio on. You gotta hear this. You gotta hear the audio. You gotta hear the audio. It's ridiculous. It made me laugh out loud. A friend of mine sent me this, and I gotta show it off. Just the ridiculousness of it. So let's see. Let me find this. Where's my X page? Here we go. All right. So hopefully it'll pick up the audio for you all, but this was at an early polling location. There are Canadians lined up outside of it, and they're chanting a very uncreative chant. So here it is. So they're doing this kind of weird chicken dance of elbows up, no more Trump. And it just goes to show that Donald Trump has truly motivated the Canadians to go out and vote for the Liberal Party in Canada. And it's very striking to see. And I think that it kind of leads me into the rest of why I want to talk about all of this, and that, rhetoric is seen worldwide. And, we like to think that Trump, obviously, nobody in their right mind genuinely believes that Canada was going to become the 51st state. It was funny, haha, on the campaign trail to talk about. Not so much now. It's not really a joke anymore. We've kind of worn it out. But that's stuck with Canadians. They're very obsessed with our politics here in the United States, and it's getting them to go out and vote for Mark Carney, who is an absolute nutbag when it comes to the Canadian political system. He's never been elected before. He was a former banker of the Bank of Canada and the Bank of England. And in my opinion, he is Justin Trudeau in a brand new outfit. He's just a slightly nicer Justin Trudeau. He's trying to give the moderate appeal like Gavin Newsom is right now in California, but we all know the truth here, folks. So let me go back to my other window. But I want to talk about this story that I saw. I've been waiting for a good opportunity to kind of show it off. But this is a story from The Hub. So this is why Gen Z is embracing Poilievre's boomers turn to Mark Carney. So we're seeing a similar trend in Canada right now, where younger generations are embracing these conservative principles. We had this whole phenomenon where when you were younger, you embraced liberal ideals, and as you aged, you turned into a conservative. And that's kind of phasing out right now, where we have a lot of older people who are very, very liberal because they follow the old school liberal crowd. And this goes for the United States and Canada. They're following an old school liberal crowd, and they're clinging to the liberals and Democrats because they used to be this kind of center left party who had fair values and made fair arguments when it came to things. And ever since, around 2000, 2008, around, that time period, that's really phased out. It's turned into an absolute woke show out there. And young people are grabbing onto this because the counterculture, at least in the Western world, is becoming a conservative culture, right? It's cool again to be a conservative, right? But, years ago, we were bashed left, right, and center. I mean, we see this in people like Charlie Kirk, like people like Ben Shapiro, Megyn Kelly for one of them, Tucker Carlson is another one. I mean, all of these big conservative voices, they have the biggest podcasts in the world, some of the biggest platforms out there, the most followed people on social media platforms when it comes to political news and everything. I mean, nobody's watching Rachel Maddow anymore. Nobody's watching Joy Reid anymore. I mean, Joy Reid lost her show, for God's sake. I mean, so many of the voices on mainstream media are just totally phasing out. I mean, Fox News even. Nobody really is even watching Fox News anymore. They had Megyn Kelly. They had Tucker Carlson. They had some of these big voices that they fired. And now they have some of the biggest independent shows in the world now when it comes to politics or just in general. I mean, go and look at the top podcast charts. The top 20 podcasts, 80% of them are all conservative based podcasts. And who listens to podcasts? Who's using the internet? Who is watching content on YouTube? Now, it's primarily people in my generation. It's primarily the 18 through 30-year-old category right now is really embracing this conservative movement. And I think it's summed up really nicely in this article. So this is focusing primarily in Canada. But like I said, we can apply the same principles to the United States. So polling by Abacus data done just before the 2021 federal election showed conservatives were the least popular with those 18 to 29. Now, this is Canada, by the way. It's not Republican conservatives. And the most popular with those over 60. Meanwhile, combined Liberal, NDP, and Green Party support was highest with younger voters and lower with older voters. But fast forward 4 years, and the script seems to have flipped. A recent Nanos poll has the Conservatives leading among Canadians 18 to 24 with 43% support, and the Liberals leading with Canadians 55 and older with 56% support. So there's a nice graphic right here. So 18 to 34, 43% support, 35 to 54, the Liberals and Conservatives are 50-50 and or 40-40. They're completely even. And by the way, the Liberal and Conservative parties are the two biggest parties in Canada. All the rest of them are very much minority parties. And then 55 and up, the Liberals are leading. So, I mean, even amongst 35 to 40-year-olds, there's just a slight increase, a slight change in the party layout. But the conservative feel for the younger generations is there. And it's really staggering to see. It's exciting for people like me who've been crying about this and working their butts off for years now to get more young people involved in politics. So this is not an outlier. Other recent polls show similar results. Recent polling from Ledger, Liaison Strategy, and Research & Co. also show the Conservatives performing better with younger voters and the Liberals performing better with older voters. One Ledger poll had even had the Conservatives in first place among 18 to 34-year-olds in Quebec, historically the least conservative province. This all begs the question, why? So it's a great question. Why is there being a big shift? Well, I just kind of explained it with new media coming out, but let's see what this article has to say. Why is it? So the answer is twofold. First, the harsh economic reality facing my generation, Gen Z, people born between 1997 and 2012. Secondly, a global vibe shift in which younger people are embracing conservatism as a form of rebellious countercultural expression, exactly what I had just mentioned. So it's interesting to see. And it's one of those things where, in my opinion, young people didn't know how bad it was until it really started getting shoved in our face how bad it was out there right now. You know, the economy is not great. Buying a house right now is terrible. You're not going to be able to do it as a young person. It's next to impossible. The housing prices are so expensive. I mean, mortgage rates are through the roof. Inflation is out of control. The buying of goods is out of hand. I mean, we have all these problems, and young people didn't accept that, I feel like, or were truly listening to the right sources. They embrace this liberal philosophy of let's help everyone because, you know, I'm very open-minded, open-hearted and everything. So I'm going to listen to what the left has to say because I just want to help everyone. And we as conservatives say, no, we can't help everyone. The government's job is to make life the best it can for all of us. Immigration, one of them, by the way, it's a big thing in the United States. I mean, I don't think that people truly knew how bad immigration was until people like Charlie Kirk started shoving it in our face, how awful the immigration issue in the United States truly was before Donald Trump completely shut that issue down, right? The border is closed for business. And it's one of the reasons why he got elected was because he was so out there pushing all this agenda. He had an amazing team around him pushing all these narratives that the United States is not doing great right now, right? You know, we have the philosophy that the United States is the greatest country on earth. It is a great country, but why is it the greatest country on earth? We can't really say exactly why that is. And the truth of the matter is the United States is not the greatest country on earth, but it has the ability to be the greatest country on earth with the right leadership. And Donald Trump has helped push us in that direction. But back to Canada. So we have reality that's hitting us in the face, right? Because now we're going out to the job market and we've gotten these degrees in gender studies and English, and we're not getting any jobs because of them. We're not getting paid what we feel like we're worth. And then we also have the fact that we have the rebellious side where we're embracing this counterculture. So a recent Abacus data poll found the top issue for voters ages 18 to 29 is reducing the cost of living, followed by housing affordability, economic growth, and making Canada a better place to live. Sounds very similar to the United States. Very similar to the United States. If you talk to young people now or conservatives, their biggest issues are, hey, it's expensive for me to live in this country right now. I can't buy a house right now. The economy isn't doing great. And I just want to live in a country and make it a better place to live in because I want to go and start a family and bring children into the world and have them live in a fantastic, miraculous country that's doing awesome. I want them to grow up in a home. I don't want them to grow up in a rented apartment, right? So this is a great poll. This is a great data set right here. So this shows blue is 18 to 29, red is 16 older, and then this green and yellow are kind of right between there. And it shows some different categories. So we can see here that the biggest issue for 16 over is dealing with Donald Trump. So we saw in that last video, by the way, if you want to see it again, there's a whole lot of old people standing in line opposing Donald Trump right here with their signs saying elbows up, no more Trump. That's the best line they could come up with. Elbows up, no more Trump. Are you kidding me? So many things rhyme with Trump, and that's the best you can come up with for a chant. Give me a break. So we can see that's the biggest issue for 60 and older. But the biggest issue for young people is making Canada a better place to live, growing the economy, making housing more affordable. We can see the biggest issue for 30 to 44-year-olds is reducing the cost of living, right? That's the age that you're at when you're starting a family for a lot of people. They're generally in, their late 20s, early 30s. We can see another big issue for older people is improving the Canadian healthcare system. Young people, that's not as big of an issue for them. It's very striking for older people. I mean, obviously for them, they're getting older, they're using healthcare a lot more. But the lowest for the older category is making Canada a better place to live. According to this polling, 60 and over, that's what is least motivating them to the polls right now is making Canada a better place to live. It's staggering to see that, right? That you don't have that faith in your country to make it a better place. Young Canadians are putting off having families because of the cost of living crisis, contributing to Canada's collapsing fertility rate. Yeah, it costs like $1 million right now in Canada to buy a home. It's ridiculous. Obviously not $1 million, but it's outrageously expensive to buy a home in Canada right now. So, quote, 78% of Canadians aged 18 to 34 feel Canada is, quote, broken, and many of us believe the Liberals are at fault. No kidding. The Liberal Party's been in power for years, right? They've caused this issue to persist. So among federal leaders, Pierre Poilievre has been the one talking the most about the issues affecting my generation. He's spoken directly to young people stuck living with their parents, promising to improve their lives through more affordable homes, good jobs, and safe streets. And he said he wants the restoration of Canadian promise to be his legacy. Mark Carney has meanwhile focused much of his campaign on Trump, the top issue for baby boomers. That's all I have to say in this article. This is a great article. Go and read it. The Hub has a lot of great news coming out of Canada. If you're at all interested in Canadian politics, this might be boring to a lot of you, but I think it's fascinating. For me, at least, to kind of share, especially from an American lens. But I want to talk about Pierre Poilievre now for a moment. So Pierre Poilievre is the leader of the Conservative Party, and he has been running kind of an awful campaign, honestly. He's a very well-spoken gentleman. He's a great guy from all that I've seen. I've watched him on several different accounts. He's very personal. He's very well spoken, but yet he's nowhere to be seen. He's not out there. He has a presence on his personal X page. He goes on a few news shows every now and then, but where are all of the clips of Pierre Poilievre getting out there and getting spicy with the media? I haven't seen any of them. Where are they at? We want to see them. I'm looking for these. I want to show them on the show, and I'm not finding them. Right? I just saw a commercial from the Liberal Party, and they pulled a quote from when he interviewed when he was interviewed by Jordan Peterson several months ago. That has to go and show you how little he's really been out there in the media. They're pulling interviews of him from months ago, and they don't have anything newer to pull from to show what his campaign is all about. Now, I understand that, this is not a president situation, right? He's campaigning for the country, but he's campaigning to get a conservative majority within the parliament to then elect him to be, the prime minister, right? He doesn't run a nationwide popular vote or electoral college like we do in the United States. So it's a little bit different, but my point still stands that where is he at? Right? Donald Trump ran a fantastic campaign. He mobilized young voters to his advantage. We see right here, young voters, they're conservative. This is a big voting block for Canadians. Get the young voters out there to vote for you. You want to get in these conservative parliament members so we have a conservative government up there in Canada. You need to mobilize these people one way or another, and you're not doing it right now. And I understand there's not a Canadian Charlie Kirk running around to all the Canadian college campuses right now trying to rally up people and everything. There's still other things you can do. Donald Trump ran a fantastic campaign. He mobilized the online media presence to his advantage, right? He got people like Charlie Kirk to go out there and campaign for him. And he got on all different podcasts. He got on Theo Vaughn. He got on Joe Rogan. He got on a handful of finance podcasts. He was out there at a Bitcoin convention, for God's sake. He was everywhere. The clips of Donald Trump, you could not get away from them. He was on every single platform. He was on all the opposition news networks. He was on all of the same ideological news networks. He was everywhere across the board, speaking his campaign message, telling us as Americans what he's going to do in office. Where is Pierre Poilievre doing the exact same thing? They need to take a page out of Trump's playbook and go for this. And it satisfies me a little bit more American to see that he's been running such an awful campaign because of this, that I won't feel totally awful if the Canadians are totally bashed when it comes to their current elections. Because according to the most recent polling, the Conservative Party is going to end up with 126 seats. You need 172 to have a majority. The Liberal Party is going to end up with 184. We'll see how accurate that is. We'll be reporting on that next Monday. You'll see the results here in the show on the show right after on Wednesday. And we'll see how it ends up for them. But they needed to mobilize the young voters so much more than they previously did. And it's truly unfortunate to see because they're out there, but they're not going to go and vote for you unless they know who you are. They need to get motivated to go and do it, right? That's why Trump was so amazing. He was out there on a garbage truck, right? He's kind of a badass out there riding around a garbage truck or at McDonald's, where you're like, man, I kind of want to go and vote for this guy now. We're being motivated by all these speakers online to say, hey, you need to go on vote. Go and vote early. Go and vote in person. Go and vote by mail. Get a ballot in one way or another. We talk about all the time in this show. Every single show I did leading up to an election day. Get a ballot in. Doesn't matter what state you're in. Every single vote matters. Go and vote. Get your ballots in. If you are Canadian and watching this show, go and vote Conservative, for God's sake. Every single vote matters in every single election. They're all very important, right? We are done with the days of landslide election victories, by the way. Trump won and people are calling it a landslide victory. It was not a landslide victory, right? He won the swing states on all chords by a slim margin in a lot of them, right? This was still a very close election when you look at it. It was not a landslide by the measures that we called landslides 25 years ago. So it's interesting to see. And, you need to counter the messaging the Liberal Party is putting out. And counter was saying, hey, we don't like Donald Trump all that much either in the Conservative Party, in Canada here. But we're going to counter him in different ways that are better for Canada than what the Liberals are going to do, right? And the ultimate goal of this segment I wanted to get to is that why do we ultimately care about this as Americans? Why do we ultimately care what happens with Canada and their elections? Well, number one, if we have a solid leader in Canada who has a more conservative lean, it's going to be a whole lot easier for our American conservative president and our American conservative leaders to work alongside them. They have similar goals here, right? And that's just not going to be the same in Canada. And I care about my Canadian friends too, right? We should care about our Canadian allies to the north. They're not just going to be pushovers. So I hope that the polling is wrong. I truly do. I hope that it's wrong. I hope that conservatives turn up for Pierre Poilievre, especially young voters, and get a majority, no matter how slim, into power. I also want to point out the polling numbers. Once again, this is a great chart. I've talked about this a few times in the show. So right now, for quite a long time, I can even expand this out. The Conservative Party, ever since July of 2022, the Conservative Party has had a majority in the polls. They peaked at 45% on January 20th, 2025, same day that Donald Trump comes in to office. And by May, that had switched to a liberal lead in the polls. And ever since then, they have gone up. And by the way, ever since January 20th, 2025, which was the low point for the Liberal Party in the polling, they have shot up like a rocket in the polls. That is entirely to do with the rhetoric coming from Donald Trump about tariffs on Canada, which, by the way, why are we tariffing the snot out of Canada? They're our closest trading allies, impacting all of us, as well as turn Canada the 51st state. We know that's not going to happen, but it offends the Canadian electorate. And it means that they could very likely continue to have a liberal government up there, in part due to the fact that we're making jokes at their expense. So it's saddening to see for me, but I want to end with talking about this. So this is an article that was published by The Hill. So why does Canada's new prime minister, what does he mean for the United States? This comes from The Hill. I'll close with this. So, Canada's new prime minister is Mark Carney. He will likely continue to be the prime minister going forward in Canada, unless, God willing, the Conservatives win. So this article paints, a black and white image of what a new Canadian leader could look like in Canada as it relates to the United States. So, the urgency of the moment is driven by the growing Canadian-U.S. trade war, with tariffs threatening key industries and disrupting the highly integrated North American supply chain. The U.S. and Canada have two of the world's most interconnected economies, with over $2 billion daily in daily trade flows between the country. There's a lot of money that trades between us every single day. They're one of our closest trading allies in the world. They're our northern neighbors, right? They're one of the reasons why we have a great position in the geopolitical climate. We have a country that's relatively peaceful to our north. Tariffs on Canadian goods, especially steel, aluminum, lumber, and energy, will affect American jobs, particularly in auto manufacturing, construction, and agriculture. Trump's tariffs on Canada could put over 500,000 U.S. jobs at risk, and raising raw mineral costs will force businesses to either pass the costs into consumers or cut jobs, making everyday goods more expensive. Leads to my point, why are we putting tariffs on Canada, right? We have so many jobs that rely on Canadian goods coming into our country. One immediate effect on the trade war will be a spike in energy prices. Canada is the largest foreign supplier of oil to the U.S., exporting over 3.5 million barrels per day. If tariffs disrupt this flow, American consumers will feel the pinch at the pump, exacerbating inflation. With global energy markets already unstable, any fraction in energy trade will add strain to American households. In response to Washington's 25% tariffs on American households. In response to Washington's 25% tariffs on Canadian imports, the government of Ontario imposed a 25% surcharge on electricity exports to Michigan, Minnesota, and New York. Although Ontario Premier Doug Ford later said he would temporarily suspend the tariffs after a conversation with U.S. Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick. Carney's approach will be particularly significant in the critical minerals sector, where security of the U.S. supply chain is a growing priority. Canada is a top global producer of essential minerals such as lithium, uranium, nickel, myroden, and cobalt, key components in electrical vehicle batteries, semiconductors, and defense technologies. As Washington works to reduce dependence on China for critical materials, Canada plays a crucial role, supplying $47 billion worth of materials to the U.S., over 50% of total American mineral imports. So this is a big deal depending on who takes over control in Canada. They can make things very, very bad for us here in the United States very quickly for a lot of these blue collar jobs that people rely on to put food on the table. To kind of end this out, the argument on tariffs was made very clear to me when tariffs were imposed on Canada to secure their border. We initially put tariffs on Canada to secure the Canadian border. Canada did that. They're investing a lot of money to do so at the Americans' will. I assumed after that the tariffs on Canada would be dropped. I assumed that was being used as a negotiating point. It apparently is not. They have stayed in place. Why they have stayed in place, I can't explain to you. I truly can't. We have basically a 50-50 trade agreement with Canada. They import about as much money in American goods as they export to us. You can go look at the tables. I just did before I recorded the show. It's very close. We import a little bit more from Canada than they import from us, but it's very reasonably close. So it's staggering to me to see the decision the U.S. government has taken on Canada as one of our allies and what that's going to mean for their political situation going forward with this most recent elections. I hope that I am proven wrong. I hope that I can sit here and say on Wednesday of next week that, hey, the Conservatives rein in the victory and the polls were wrong. Gen Z turned up for the Conservatives, and we have a new prime minister in Canada, that being Pierre Poilievre, but we'll see how it goes. So, and this isn't trying to be a bash on Donald Trump, right? I think more people need to understand that you can have a centrist point of view and that there are many, many things that Donald Trump that does are good. There's many things I also have disagreements with that Donald Trump is doing. And that's okay to have. We can have both of them in our society. It's okay to disagree. If you're someone who voted for Donald Trump, you don't have to support 100% of the things that he agrees on, right? You might not like his stance on abortion policy, right? You might be a very staunchly pro-life person and not like Donald Trump's position on abortion policy, but you still voted for him because you know that he's way more pro-life than Kamala Harris ever could be. So we can have these trade-offs. I feel like conservatives do a little bit better than the liberals do, but for some reason, when it comes to criticizing Donald Trump in any way, people get a lot of attack for that. And I think that we need to have a better philosophy of speaking our minds about how we feel about our current political situations, about our current political leaders, and holding them responsible for who they are and what they're doing. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, they work for us, and they should be getting the best out of it. And we as Americans should be getting the best out of it. And right now, what we're putting on Canada, the United States is not getting the best out of it, right? We're seeing that these effects could happen to the United States if these tariffs maintain. And like I said, we'll see how we are a year from now. We'll see if there's been a significant impact in jobs. Hopefully jobs have been created. Hopefully industry has been moved to the United States. Hopefully tariffs have been dropped on countries like Canada. I'm holding out my opinion on exactly how I feel about all of that until we start getting campaign season for 2026 for the midterms. Because mark my words, like I've said before, if we do not have measurable, stable results for how these tariffs have impacted the citizens of the United States, and hopefully they've impacted them in a positive way, we are going to get absolutely hammered in the midterms. We're going to lose the House, likely, if we do not have these measurable results on tariff policy alone. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, Americans are spending more money to put food on the table for their family. They're going to be pissed off. And that's all I got to say about that. So we'll see how elections go in Canada. Like I said, they're next Monday, exactly 1 week from today. If you're Canadian, go on and vote Conservative. Every single vote matters. You need to get out there. If you know people in Canada, you have to rally behind them. Get the Conservative vote in. Do not have it be a wasted vote. And do everything in your power, fight like hell to get better leadership in the country of Canada. Because ultimately it benefits us as Americans. We live just south of them, for God's sake. In fact, many Canadians live south of the most northern point of the United States anyway. So we're buddy like that. So this show has gone way over because of this long discussion in Canada. But I wanted to get it out of the way. I wanted to get it out of the way in a big chunk because, we don't talk about Canada. We don't talk about other countries all that much on this show or in American news in general, because honestly, they don't really matter that much when it really comes down to it at the end of the day. But I hope that you understand now Canada does have importance to us as a geopolitical ally, and having a conservative leader in power there benefits everyone across the board, especially us as Americans. And we continue to push for that messaging. And that's okay to criticize Donald Trump for his policies, even though he's done plenty of things that we all like to have. Like, I love his stance on immigration. I think he hasn't gone far enough with that. That's all I got to say about this. Great show, everyone. I've enjoyed it very much. I hope you enjoyed watching it. Please tune in with us on Wednesday for our next installment. If you haven't already picked it up or not, we're doing reruns of the Monday and Wednesday show on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 8 p.m. Eastern time. So if you missed the show, we're trying to get it out there more for a broader audience. So if you missed it, if you're coming in here at the end, you missed some of it, you can watch it again live Tuesday, Thursday, 8 p.m. You can also watch the reruns on YouTube and Rumble, as well as on my personal X page. Just have to scroll down through my feed a little bit to go and see it. But with that, have a great rest of your Monday. Have a great rest of your week. We'll see you back here on Wednesday to discuss more about the current state of American politics in the United States. And yes, if you're not following me on X already, follow me at HomoNation, all the platforms, X, YouTube, Instagram, Rumble, TikTok, all of them across the board. Follow the show at Spin Cycle Live on X, on Rumble. Give us a subscribe there. Give us likes there. Every single one matters. I don't want to beg it on my knees for them, but they do matter. They do help us out, boost the show up in the algorithm and everything. Gets more people watching. Share the show with friends. Let people know how great it is. So this is your one-stop shop to get news that is not necessarily being talked about by a whole lot of other people, at least in my opinion, from what I've seen. So I try and find stories that are not necessarily the most prevalent amongst other news sources. You get something different from this show, right? You get a different perspective. I'm not like these other news broadcasters out there, right? I got the good stories. I got the good opinions. We mix it in with some humor and everything. It's a fun show. It's very laid back, right? So with that, I've been Nathan Hale. This has been Spin Cycle Live. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. We'll see you back here on Wednesday. With that, peace.